Yeah, what's really cool as well is we can actually just look at volume over time as well. Like we can see how many containers you're moving month over month. And so I know when you're going to have a capacity flux. I know when is an actual good time to call you, right? If you've got steady year round, okay, well, probably any time is a good time to get in with you. But retail, produce, I mean, even certain industries, we can look at their historical data and find out so much about them. We can find out, is this project-based freight? Are they just bringing in 48 containers, nothing, 48 containers, right? So shout out to the solar projects out there. But you can look at these graphs and understand that, okay, they're getting most of their containers in September. Then that's when they're going to have a flux in drayage. But then I also know now October, November is also going to be a tough time for them full truckload wise. So if you can understand those data points as well, you're also going to have a better opportunity to just get in with them.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Sales-CRM. They are one of the only CRMs built specifically for freight brokers and freight agents. Not only can you manage your shipper sales prospecting, you can also manage your carriers and the lanes they run directly in the CRM. Check out sales-crm.com, and thanks again for the sponsorship. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the ThinkFreight Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and I'm really excited to have James Brewer. He's the co-founder at Import Yeti. James, welcome to the pod, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. Excited to be on the podcast and chatting with you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. We have your alert dogs are on full, they're fully ready. They're ready to tell you the packages have arrived or someone's at the door. If you're watching the podcast right now, guys, James is a massive Notre Dame fan. I'm totally kidding. But he's got the Notre Dame, Alabama Rose Bowl displayed there. Of course, Alabama took the victory, but really cool there. Did you end up going to the game or that was in Dallas, right?
Yeah, that was during COVID when the Rose Bowl couldn't actually host it, so they did it at AT&T Stadium. So my wife and I are both Alabama alumni, and we went out to the game, had a good time. Anytime there's a game in an Alabama game in Dallas, we get out to it for sure. But we're going to a couple this year as well. Georgia weekend is one of them. Yeah, there you go. We're pulling out things. I'll just. This is my stash.
Okay, that's fine. No, that's cool, man. No hate to Alabama. I mean, Nick Saban, one of the greatest head coaches of all time. I'm really happy he's covering game day. It's made game day a lot more fun, in my opinion. If you're not a game day watcher, I'm a massive game day watcher, but enjoy watching that, man. No, that's really cool. I'm excited to have you on. You and I have talked, I think once or twice off pod. I think what you guys are doing is really fascinating. And, as a previous freight broker in my past life, I could see this being a tool that could be utilized, not just for its original intent, maybe, but, for freight brokers, for, people who work in the drayage side, who are just kind of looking for different ways to, I guess, get creative with finding it and prospecting, right? So I want to dive, kind of into kind of who the heck you are and how you found yourself in the wonderful freight world, right? It's a pretty interesting world. So how'd you find yourself here? What got you involved?
Yeah, so kind of crazy story. So when I was at the University of Alabama, I was working in the athletic department for a while. Ended up actually being a part of the Crimson Heart Foundation, which was Mal Moore, who's the athletic director who actually hired Nick Saban. He had unfortunately passed away, but his daughter was producing his autobiography. And so I had sort of taken it upon myself to become director of marketing for her. She said, I need somebody to help me figure out how to sell these. And I was like, okay, I'll take this up my senior year. And I remember halfway through, she goes from, we got to figure out how to sell these to, I don't know how to distribute these. And I was like, I don't either. So I'm frantically figuring out how do I get a full truckload shipment from Alabama Books to Amazon distribution center, putting in the POs, all of this. And that was kind of like my first introduction to logistics. And when you had all the recruiters coming by at senior year, the career days, NTG Freight was the company who was sort of stood out to me. I had known that I'd wanted to move to Dallas, and sure enough, They had an offering in the Dallas location for me to be part of one of their training classes, and that's kind of how I ended up doing logistics as a start. I knew it was something that would be fairly recession proof, something that would be a solid career for myself, and was lucky enough that I survived the classic. Make sure you get enough margin in the first couple months that NTG has, and so
Yeah.
it was a fantastic time. Really enjoyed my time there. And that was my first launch into logistics was NTG right out of college.
No, that's cool. How long were you at NTG, and like what was that role like? Was that like a full cradle to grave broker? What is NTG's kind of model like for those who may not be aware?
Yeah, so I know there's been some few changes with transportation insights. So I can't speak to what the model is now, but when I was hired, it was definitely a cradle to grave model. So a lot of doing things myself. I was an account manager. Got lucky to get promoted to the senior account manager role, which is when you started to get people sort of you became, instead of you were part of a pod, you were your own pod. Is kind of how I described the change there. So started getting enough enterprise accounts that I had my own team with me, things of that nature. Was there for about 2 years and left for a company called Challenger Motor Freight. They're an asset-based company up in Canada. I was really lucky. They were a company that was offering remote work. I was just moving into my current house that I am in now with my now wife. We were engaged at the time, and I joked that I was pre work from home before the pandemic. I was an expert before everyone else, but Challenger was a lot more of a sales, sort of more of an enterprise account manager or sales role, where I would have account managers under me already, and really focused a lot at Challenger on multimodal type of sales. At NTG, I was doing a lot of, I would do sprinter vans, I would do drayage, I would do full truckload. If somebody had it, I would move it. And Challenger was a little bit more focused. I tried to focus on multimodal type of sales, where we were doing drayage containers to transloading to full truckload distribution after that. I was very lucky that Challenger had a very robust network within Canada. And oftentimes a lot of US companies, when they have a Canadian branch, aren't the best at figuring out how to distribute there. So we had a pretty big competitive advantage there. And they've actually now gone and gotten they're with, I believe it's Fast Freight now, and they're actually working on some really cool cross-border stuff as well there. So that was the next stop in the logistics career.
Yeah, I think I looked at your LinkedIn. I think it looks like you spent like around 3 years there, and then you took another role after that. What were you doing after you left Challenger? I guess what was maybe the reason you decided to leave Challenger and pursue something else?
Yeah, it was kind of this crazy experience. I wasn't like looking or anything like that. And I went to Retail Industry Leaders of America. They had a conference out here at the Gaylord, and was, setting up our booth. And this company, Anthill, which is the company I ended up moving to, was the booth next to us, but their LTL shipment hadn't arrived, and they were trying to figure out, what did we do with our booth if we don't actually have a booth? And the poor team, they were going to Party City and getting like streamers to get this, you basically just have that Walmart folding table, and trying to figure out, how do we decorate this and make this something unique? And so we helped them out. And as you know, with trade shows, the more you sit next to somebody, the more you're like, wow, this is a really cool pitch. And so with Anthill, their whole thing was around frontline workers. So truck drivers, people who work in warehouses. And the idea was, HR solutions are very app based, but a lot of this workforce doesn't have a cell phone, right? 20% of that workforce actually has a flip phone. So if you ask them, hey, download ADP, you're leaving out 20% of your workforce. And I was like, this is $1 billion idea. What, why are you not a $1 billion company? And she sort of said, well, we don't really have a sales process. We haven't done a lot of this. So I said, I'm willing to come on board. I know it's a startup, but I was luckily offered the head of sales role, and took advantage of that and went for it. So had a lot of good times at Anthill. We went through a couple of rounds of funding, and then I saw an opportunity to exit with my equity. And I said, okay, I'll go ahead and take that. And sort of that's my break right before Anthill.
Yeah.
And what was interesting about that, little break was, I had been probably user number 3 on Import Yeti's website. Like I had found it right when Dave had put it on Reddit. For those who don't know, Dave is the actual founder of Import Yeti. I'm the co-founder who sort of came along and came in at the right time. But, Dave had made this tool, made this product. I was actually using it when I was at Challenger Motor Freight to prospect. And I'd always thought it was amazing. Such a cool tool. And so after I leave Anthill, I'm sort of looking around, figuring out what I want to do. And I reach out to Dave and say, hey, I think this tool is so close to being probably the best prospecting tool in the logistics marketplace, period. What are you doing with that? And he's, funny enough, I'm starting to look into that and starting to grow that. Do you want to help me out a little bit? And I said, okay, I'll help you out. And so, sort of how we do things at Import Yeti is we walk and then we crawl and then we walk and then we run. And so, start off sort of consulting. We got a couple sales under the belt. Then it became full time. And then it came, hey, I think we're ready to launch this full time. Be very aggressive with this. Let's bring you on as part of the owner and founding team. So that's how I became co-founder at Import Yeti. It's kind of been a wild career. You kind of just ran through my entire LinkedIn there. But yeah, it's always been, something for me around sales. I think sales is kind of my number one passion. I just love getting to meet people, getting to know how their business works. And then, if you're a good salesperson, I don't think you're ever selling. You're truly just helping them find a solution that's going to improve their business. And if you look at all my steps in my career, that's really what I focused on, right? NTG was small, medium-sized businesses, trying to get them to have the power of what a brokerage can bring. Challenger was finding people who were struggling at distribution. Anthill was people who were struggling to retain a workforce. And now with Import Yeti, that's kind of come full circle. I'm now selling to the people who are freight brokers or in asset based and helping them find the clients that do the specific freight that they have capacity for.
Yeah, man, you summed it up perfectly. You've had a really interesting career, like a wild ride, right? I mean, you went from being a freight broker to being more on the asset side, to working with more, this company that is helping solve other issues, and you dive right back into logistics. I think what I guess I'm so fascinated because what led you, or when did, I guess you said you were your Reddit user number, or your Import Yeti user number 3 from Reddit.
Yeah.
So I guess, how long has Import Yeti been around, first of all?
Yeah. So, kind of COVID was when it became like a real big project. So sort of how Import Yeti even came to be, Dave actually owns an e-commerce brand and had just made this tool internally to help him find suppliers overseas. I had found it because I was messing around with some like Amazon FBA, eBay, basically buy things from China and then flip them.
Yep.
Kind of the number one thing that I had worked on flipping was those massage guns when those got really popular in the day. People were selling them for $100 a pop here in America, but you can buy them from $15 on Alibaba, and so I would get those and flip them. And it was kind of a nice extra revenue stream at the time. And, Import Yeti popped up on one of the Reddit pages that I was on. And, it was really about a tool to help people find suppliers overseas. I mean, it's not an easy process by any means.
No.
There's not exactly, you've got language barriers. It's not really something where people have a resume, right? And so Import Yeti was fantastic at sort of creating this area where people could go and look and see, okay, hey, if I want to go get a massage gun, who makes those? If I look at Hyper Ice, right? Huge in the game there, and you could actually see this is where they get their suppliers overseas. Now, some of those suppliers are not easy to work with because you have to have a certain amount of volume. So in that case, I can't go reach out to them, but maybe there's certain items that I can get there and sort of have that little arbitrage, right? And so that's kind of how Import Yeti started, was this area where, hey, this is an interesting data point. This is something we can look at. And as we continued to grow, there were users like myself who would reach out to Dave and say, hey, I've done this, Amazon flipping thing, but also I work in logistics, and this actually tells me how many containers somebody is bringing in from overseas. And that data really allows me to be super aggressive in my sales pitch. Like my sales pitch is, I tell this story all the time. This was kind of the changing point in my freight career. So I was at NTG. I was making phone calls, and the COO of Johnson Controls, whose also name was James, picks up the phone, and I'm doing that classic pitch. Hey, I work in freight. I'm with NTG. What are you moving? And he goes, "This sucks." And I went, "Whoa, okay, I didn't expect to hear that." And I said, hold on, before you hang up the phone, the real reason I called you, you have a facility in Columbus, Ohio. I just landed a lane that's bringing 5 truckloads to that area. Why can't we work together, right? And he goes, "You should start every phone call like that. And you can call me again on Thursday at 1:00 and we have an actual conversation." And so my sales pitch had always changed to being very specific. Hey, you're distributed in Walmart or Sam's Club. I have a 97% on-time delivery mark there. Things of that nature. And I saw this data in Import Yeti, and I said, whoa, if I can call somebody and say, hey, I know that you've moved 68 drayage containers into the US last month.
Yep.
That changes the conversation. That's removing objections immediately. It's something that's very easy to talk about. They can't say, oh, I don't move anything. I'm looking at the data right here, and I know it's true. And so Dave started getting more calls around that, more people reaching out about that.
Yeah.
And the site just started to build from there. How do we look at data points specifically by port? How do we look at data points specifically by final destination? And what's funny about that is, we're as a company, we're so focused on our customer feedback. Really, the tool has taken the path of what our users have requested. There's never really been the vision from us is not, oh, this is what I want it to look like. The vision has just simply been, let's talk to as many customers as we can every single day. Let's make sure they, one, love the platform, but two, listen to what they want to say. And so it evolved from this place of just finding where do people get items overseas to we can take this deep level analysis and tell you exactly how many containers move into this distribution center. So that was kind of a long way to answer to how we started, but that's kind of the path that we took and how I ended up here and how we've been so successful.
No, man, that's really cool, and it's great that you just kind of reached out as like, hey, I'm a user. Hey, Dave, I like this product. This is how I used it in logistics, and now you're the co-founder of the platform. What was what was that timeline like? Like, how did that process go when you first reached out to him to, I guess maybe the first day of you being a co-founder, or that first day of him being like, hey, like, when do you how can you use your background in sales and logistics and help Import Yeti today?
Yeah, that was about a 4 or 5 year process from the first time that I ever actually contacted Dave on the platform to now. It was, just sort of helping him out as a user. I would ask him things, and he would, I would always say like, hey, is there a logistics platform for this coming? Is it coming? And he's always like, I think so. And, kept reaching out. And then really the part where we got momentum was that break after Anthill was, okay, yeah. I legitimately think this could be a massive revenue stream for us. I'm saying, hey, I'm very used to the game. I know the logistics game, right? I know who all the players are, and we had so many meetings, and it was funny. It just started off as a meeting once a month, so we would meet about once a month. Then we'd start meeting every 2 weeks, then every week, and then it became every day, and then it became what it is now. So I think it's definitely something that I admire very much about Dave, and kind of one of my favorite things about working for him is he will always give you an opportunity. And if you succeed at that opportunity, then you get to the next step. He's always willing to give people a chance. And, also him and now myself as well, just so open to listening to our customers. And that's something that has allowed us to have such a competitive advantage, and something I'm very, very happy that Dave did.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. Let me ask you, so like, you came from the traditional freight world, traditional sales role. Like, what have been maybe some of the biggest hurdles that you've faced in becoming a tech entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think the biggest switch from logistics to SaaS sales is the concept of there's no actual physical good, right? There's absolutely. You're not selling, Dallas to Houston. You are selling that this can provide this benefit to you. And so the conversation doesn't become as much a cost savings anymore. It becomes ROI situation. And that was something, especially I was so lucky at Anthill, we were starting off, we were a complete new company, new tech product, and we were having to figure out how do we even do pricing presentations. I mean, I think one of the big things about me is I'm never willing to just say, hey, my process is correct. I want to learn and want to learn from it and be aggressive about it. And one of the things we did at Anthill that was kind of the game changer for our sales process was I just emailed 32 CEOs from my favorite companies that all had, deskless workers that were remote, or sorry, not remote, but frontline workers who were actually working in warehouses, et cetera. Yeah. And I said, hey, we're a tech startup. We think you would be a good fit for this. I don't want you to buy this from me. I want you to listen to my presentation and tell me what I do wrong. And so about 12 CEOs responded to that and said, sure, I'll do it. And from those, about 8 of them bought the platform. And so it was sort of this process of let's actually listen to what they say. And what was so interesting about talking to the CEOs was they all said, hey, if you change this from just simple, like this is what it costs, this is benefit, I need to see my bottom line. And you need to tell me, hey, if you take, because our average was about a 40% increase in retention year over year. Yeah. If you take a 40% retention in my workforce, ask me what I'm paying per hour, ask me what I'm paying per hire, give me that math at the end of it. And so we would give them the math at the end of it and they'd be like, yeah, I can't say no to this. This is very obvious. So it's very much a sale, no much more of this is more on time. This is more, larger cost cutting. It's purely around your ROI. And I think budgeting is so much more interesting in the technology space. There's clearly a budget that has to happen in freight. There's no doubt that your product has to move. And sure, when people do RFPs, there's budgeting involved. But when you talk about technology platforms, they're setting these budgets at one period of time. And that's the time period that they can fit in. And everybody's on a different cycle. And so it's kind of like the RFP process is kind of the best way to describe it. If you ever make the jump from logistics to tech sales, is you have to understand when that cycle is for them. And you got to get in there and make your best pitch. So that was probably the biggest change was there's no opportunity to get into what you're moving today. It is, you got to be in that cycle and you got to win that cycle.
Yeah, no, that's spot on. So I went from logistics to tech sales as well, to FreightWave Sonar, and it's the same thing. We're selling basically a tab in a window that says, "Hey, we can provide ROI to your business," and it's like, yeah, but like, how can you provide that value? How can we see that? And a lot of times, people don't realize, but there's a lot of stakeholders involved with these decisions. It may be a mid-sized company, but there could still be 10 decision makers that have to be involved to make sure that, whatever platform it is you're selling is a right fit for every single team that's going to have to utilize it. And it is a big investment. And like you said, we could be pitching today in September, but, they may not have the budget until March 1st or April 1st. And then, we know, okay, hey, we've got to do a long follow-up process. It's going to be, hey, how can we even potentially create budget today? Or there's a lot of different, processes and thoughts that kind of go behind tech sales that you don't think about when you're in logistics, right? Like you said, you're moving Texas to Seattle, Texas to Chicago. You're selling capacity, you're selling loads. So it's a little bit different of a sale, but if, like you said, if you're processed and you kind of know things, and if you're not scared to learn and adapt your process, and also I think what you and Dave kind of do really well, and why I think maybe you guys work really well together, is you take that user feedback and you're not afraid to take, whether it's positive or critical feedback, and take it and implement things that can be useful, to your business or to your advantage. So I think that's critical.
Yeah, I actually have my whiteboard behind me has the number one question I always ask people is there seems to be a reason for why you're saying that. And so I always love the conversation with people like, oh, I hate your platform. What is the reason, right? I want to know. And so anytime I get an objection in anything in life, that's usually the question I ask, is I'd rather know why you feel that way. Yeah. Even if there's nothing I can change about it, it's better to understand the root cause, because I think a lot of people just take rejection for its face value. And it's like, oh no, anytime we lose a deal, we have to ask ourselves, was there anything we did in that process that was wrong? Was there anything that we can change in that process next time? Being aggressive about feedback, I think, really helps you stand out. And we've had a lot of deals where people said no initially, and then 6 months later, because we were aggressive around figuring out why it was a no, ended up signing with us. So yeah, that's something that's huge for us.
Let's dive more into, we've talked for the last 20 minutes about your background, a little bit more about Import Yeti, but
Yeah.
I want to dive really deep into Import Yeti because I think it's so important. You as a freight broker, when you were at, Challenger, you used it, so how can freight brokers, how can drayage providers, who are moving a lot of dray or intermodal freight, how can they utilize the Import Yeti data to expand their customer base, whether that's the customers they already have, or whether they're trying to expand into new markets or into new customers?
Yeah, can you hear Rosie in the background barking?
I
Right?
can't. She's telling us, hey,
Let me close the door real quick. She's excited about the package delivery. So the number one thing
me too, man.
Yeah. So I think the number one thing that we always talk about and what we see, especially with success within our customer base, is really focusing on what your strengths are. I think a lot of people in sales, we go with the, if you have it, we'll move it.
Yeah.
And something that I was aggressive on, and kind of what I've seen a lot of our customers do, is very much focus on what do you specifically have that I have a competitive advantage in, right? Maybe it's because I can offer you larger cargo insurance. Maybe it's because I'm very good at over-dimensional freight. Maybe it's just simply I know that I have a bunch of overweight containers in Savannah, Georgia, which was something I used to sell quite a bit of. And what's beautiful about the data set within Import Yeti is we can filter through all those things. We can be as broad as it came into Savannah, Georgia, or we can be as honed in as it came into Savannah, Georgia. It's coming in on an overweight 20 and it's delivering within a 15-mile address of Alpharetta, Georgia. We can actually look at the exact lane that's occurring. And something that we're seeing a lot of success for as well, and something we're still building out on the platform and making even more aggressive moves around, is the idea of the final destination of that container.
Yeah.
Because that's not just going to signify where the drayage move is, it's also going to signify where the truckload is. If you've received 75 40-foot containers, well, there's going to be roughly 63 53-foot dry vans that need to leave that facility, unless you're somehow consuming it on site. And so when you take that data analysis and understand somebody's network before you even call them, it's such a game changer to that process. It kind of goes back to that Johnson Controls phone call that I had, right? The idea of my phone calls are now targeted. They're, hey, I have capacity here. Hey, I know that you're moving frozen food into Beaumont, Texas, right? That's something where I was just giving that example the other day to one of our customers. We were looking through one of the BOLs, and the product description was, this is specifically frozen food. Okay, well, now when we call them, we're not just telling them, hey, we have reefer capacity. We're telling them, hey, we can do frozen capacity for you. And by the way, one of our competitive advantages is we can track this 24/7, because this food, if it doesn't become frozen, obviously your customer can't take it. So a lot of advantages to that there, using that data to specifically focus on where you have a competitive advantage, or just simply making that phone call such an easier conversation, right?
Yeah.
You got to think about how the person on the other end of the line of the call, they're getting these phone calls all the day. Hey, I want to move your freight. Hey, I want to move your freight. Hey, I know this is what you have and I have the capacity for it. It's a game changer. You're going to have a completely different conversation with them. And kind of the number one thing that I tell people is you can remove objections before they're even told, right?
Yeah.
You can remove, I don't move freight. You can remove, I'm not interested. You can remove that, I don't use this company. Well, our data set actually has what freight forwarder or steamship line they use. So that's even a data set where I, as a salesperson, know, hey, if I want to go get drayage, if they're using a freight forwarder, I'm going to contact the freight forwarder. If they're using a steamship line, then I know they probably have an internal team. So when you use all these data points, use your knowledge, you're cutting down on that information that you need to know. And then when you come at them with a very targeted pitch, they're just a lot more interested in chatting with you, right? I think I've had a lot of conversations with some of my old customers, and number one thing they always said was, it's such a pain to explain my supply chain to somebody. That doesn't make me want to do business with you. You should understand that I'm a food company and these are the things that I have, right? And so that's what our data allows a lot of our customers to do.
Yeah, I think that those are two really good points I want to touch on. So number one is kind of that common objection. Something you and I have probably heard 10,000 times is, we're not adding transportation providers at this time. And that's just, a phrase that they say constantly because it's more of a defense mechanism, right? But if you came at them, James, and said, "Hey, I understand you may not be adding any more transportation capacity at this time, but I do have 10 trucks that go into Savannah where I know you guys do 68 containers a month." Where we may be able to help you guys transload those containers and move them full truckload, or whether you guys are moving them, as containers to another facility, we may be able to help you with that because we do have a lot of capacity going in and out of the port of Savannah. That may open up a lot more conversations than, "Hey, I have trucks, can I move your freight?" or, "Hey, I'm a broker, I can give you 24/7 service." But that provides such a deeper conversation right off the get-go. You, like you said, you kind of can naturally bring down some of those barriers right from the get-go.
Yeah, what's really cool as well is we can actually just look at volume over time as well. Like we can see how many containers you're moving month over month. And so I know when you're going to have a capacity flux. I know when is an actual good time to call you, right? If you've got steady year round, okay, well, probably any time is a good time to get in with you. But retail, produce, I mean, even certain industries, we can look at their historical data and find out so much about them. You can find out, is this project-based freight? Are they just bringing in 48 containers, nothing, 48 containers, right? So shout out to the solar projects out there. But you can look at these graphs and understand that, okay, they're getting most of their containers in September. Then that's when they're going to have a flux in drayage. But then I also know now October, November is also going to be a tough time for them full truckload wise. So if you can understand those data points as well, you're also going to have a better opportunity to just get in with them because, hey, I noticed that you have a massive influx. You're moving double the containers that you normally do, right? Your average monthly TEU is doubled this month. I think you might have some capacity issues. I think this might be a good time for us to chat.
Yeah, exactly. And then regardless, you kind of know their flux time. So, there's times where, it may take you a year to close on that customer, but hey, if you've talked to them and you can continue to say, "Hey, like I'm still running some of this capacity," and you can just kind of keep that friendly dialogue in, creating custom market updates for them and how you might be able to add value and just continuously just show them, "Hey, like I'm an expert in what I'm doing. I'm not just here for, to move all of your freight. Like I can expertly help you." And, that it just changes the game for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you guys have so much custom data from, for everywhere you guys are sourcing from. So how can, I guess, brokers, there's so much noise out there in terms of info and data. How can they know that, what information that they're getting from Import Yeti is good data, that it's going to provide them with kind of the actual info they're looking for, whether they are, right now, whether they're full truckload broker, whether they're, LTL partial, whether they're kind of looking for just kind of an expansion into something. How can they know that the data that you guys are providing is good? Where do you guys maybe source some of that data from?
Yeah, well, everybody in our industry sources from the same spot. I don't think everyone says that, but we do because we're a transparent company. Customs and Border Patrol considers BOLs that come in and out of the country part of the Freedom of Information Act. So we're getting this directly from Customs and Border Patrol. They send us tens of thousands of PDFs a day, and we take all of them and put them in a digestible format that you see today.
Now, all of those are definitely hand scanned by some guy named Jerry in a back room somewhere. Right? He's hand scanning every one of these. It takes him all day, right?
We actually just have 6 people in a sweatshop. Very advanced algorithms. So we joke that it's very cheap to get the data. It's very expensive to actually sort through it. And so, for us, we really are heavily focused on giving you the data as it is. We don't try and do any machine learning around it. We simply focus on what exists within the data set that we receive from the government.
Right.
That is to say, some other people in the industry, we get this question a lot, actually. So one of the enterprise shippers, Walmart, we all obviously know that one. We often get the question, "Hey, I'm on one of your competitors' sites, and it says that they have 20,000 more containers than you." And the reason behind that is they consider any shipment that's going to a Walmart facility a Walmart shipment. We don't do that. we focus heavily on ownership because, especially coming from a freight background, we
Yeah,
completely understand that, just because it delivers to Walmart to DC does not mean Walmart is going to be the company that you got to call to actually move that shipment.
exactly.
And so we're very aggressive around the idea of ownership of freight, being transparent around the data points. Hey, this is the consignee. This is where it's going. Can't guarantee you that they own it, right? This is the company that's been legally imported under. More than likely, they own that freight. So it's something that we're very aggressive about that. And we're almost unaggressive around machine learning. We're very much, this is the data as it exists. If we don't have that data point, we're not going to make an algorithmic guess. We have plenty of customers who do that internally if they would like to. That we've worked with many customers via API connections or just data dumps where they will make their own assumptions within their own programs or within their own company. More than happy for people to do that. But we're never going to be somebody who's aggressive around trying to guesstimate what something may be. If we don't know it, we don't know it. That's something that's a pretty big foundational thing about Import Yeti is if you ask us a question, we don't know the answer, we will simply tell you, we don't know, but we're going to go find out. And so that's something that's huge for our customer base and really allows people to trust this data is we don't manipulate it very much. And we'll tell you, hey, we think this is odd as well. We don't know why, but this is the data we've received.
No, I like that a lot, man, because like you said, as a freight broker, that all the freight going to Walmart isn't always owned by Walmart. There's times, and this isn't more of the import side, but I was doing a lot of AG, a lot of agriculture, moving a lot of pumpkins and watermelons and stuff like that into Walmarts. They don't own that freight. Like they are directly buying that freight. And I am as a transportation provider, I was literally setting up everything with Walmart internally. So they were, whether that shipment goes there or not, like, yes, it's going there, but again, it's not, Walmart doesn't own that like direct shipment. It's not a Walmart shipment, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a Walmart like tendered shipment. What is, so I think that's kind of why maybe some of those discrepancies are there between you and maybe some of the competitors, right? Because you guys are, like you said, you're in freight. You've been in freight. You understand this aspect of it when you're trying to utilize this data as a freight broker or as a forwarder or as someone who works in dray or an asset. What people are looking for, and it's good that you guys. I think it's interesting that you guys aren't doing too much in terms of scrubbing the data, cleaning the data, looking at it from different algorithm points, because you could do that, right? You could take a whole you make a whole bunch of different trends and different ways that things could go based on the algorithms. But again, you just want to get the data out there so people can utilize that data and kind of make their own decisions. You're helping people in a sense make an informed decision.
Yeah, it's kind of like sports gambling. You can look at all the statistics, right? You can look at yards per game and all that, but I won't tell you which side to pick. But we've got all that advanced data if you want it, right?
No, that's really awesome, and like you said, and you can use that data to predict trends and to make strategic decisions. But you're not going to be the one. Import Yeti is not going to be the one telling you or giving you that specific trend or data. So, yeah, I think that's fantastic because I think sometimes we can get lazy as a person, as a people, and even in business, where we can look at, Import Yeti says this is going to happen, so that this must happen, and we don't kind of analyze the data in our own way because every business is going to be different. Every need of the business is going to be different. So when you say if Import Yeti says yes, this is going to trend this way, and it doesn't, then it's like, oh well, Import Yeti is now not a good product, when in sense it's just hey, this is AI doing this, not really it's just kind of based on different factors. So yeah, I think it's good that you guys don't go out of your way to do that. What are some of maybe the biggest points that you guys see brokerages and asset companies coming to you guys and say, hey, these are the kind of data we're looking for? And how are you guys even maybe going a little bit further and saying, hey, we even have these specific data points that maybe even help you guys even further than you thought what you were looking for?
Yeah, I think, we're often getting most of the questions we find now are just how can I make my salespeople more efficient, right?
Yeah.
We're potentially looking at a recession. So some people are making sure that they don't hire as many people as possible and then just find out which ones work. They're really focusing on, hey, these people are proven salespeople. How do we make them more efficient? How do we make them better at selling? And so that's kind of the main, I would say probably the number one thing that I get most often from our customer base and prospects is, how do we make sure that we're more efficient? How do we make sure that the salespeople are spending as much time as possible selling, but make sure they're selling it in an efficient manner? I think a lot of what we focus on, a lot of what we work on telling people is finding the sub data, right? There's the things you can obviously see, and then there's the things that may not be as obvious. There's things where if you actually dive into the BOLs, you can look at the product descriptions and they'll have interesting information. Like we talked about, hey, this, I can click into I can look at the data and say, okay, this is a insulated container that came into Savannah, Georgia. But then when we dive into the BOL, we can actually see that the product description says this is frozen food specifically. Yep. Or it can actually say, hey, this is getting transloaded. We've seen that within our cargo descriptions of people saying, oh, this is meant to be transloaded. This is currently floor loaded, will be shrink wrapped, will be palletized. And wow, okay, now I know exactly what I need to sell you, right? You're doing a transload. And so I think a lot of the challenges are just sometimes there's a good old fashioned digging into things one by one can really reveal some amazing stuff. We're trying to help people be as efficient as possible. There's things, obviously our system is very simple. We just actually added this week an AI tool where people can just type in, hey, I want to see who has the most containers in Savannah, Georgia last month, and it will put in the filters for you. So a lot of what we're trying to be aggressive around is making the tool as easy as possible to use for everyone.
Yeah.
But there's still that extra level that if you as a salesperson just hop into a customer that you really like and look through their BOLs one by one. Yeah, it might take you 5-10 minutes, but you might find that one BOL that says, hey, this is getting transloaded. Or, hey, it might say, contact this person at Expeditors because that's who the freight forwarder is. So That's something that we're trying to be a little bit more aggressive through. I think there's probably going to be a lot in the future that we do around that and figuring out how do we make that even easier for the customer. But that's kind of the number one thing that I see as sometimes people miss the mark, I guess you would say, when thinking about the issues that they want to achieve and what is an effective strategy or what works the best.
Looking ahead, how do you see Import Yeti evolving over the next few years? Are there any potential expansions or even deeper features you guys have in the pipeline for 2025? And how hard is it to maybe stay ahead of some of these trends or potential things that may be needed with the kind of the overall global trade climate? Like you said, with fears of a recession looming, we've got Houthi rebels shooting at container ships. There's a lot going on, economically and global trade wise. So, what do you guys, maybe have in the pipeline, kind of looking ahead?
Yeah, a lot of it is based on customer requests. I can tell you right now, we're already working on finding some additional data sets to fill holes within our current ones, try and find new forms of transportation that we can get more data on, which is very exciting. One of the bigger things that we're working on right now is just the idea of geolocation and when something is a final destination or not. Being able to analyze that and say, okay, this is how many containers actually have ended up at this particular DC based on the data that we have. I think there's a lot of data within our subset that we still haven't combed through and gone. And some of it just has to, quite frankly, need a human eye to understand it. But once we look at it with a human eye, we can say, okay, this is how it goes through. I always tell people, people ask all the time, sometimes you see Walmart spelled incorrectly or Walmart Inc. versus Walmart on the website. And it's a couple different things, but you have to look at it with machine learning in mind, right? Just because something is one letter off, to a human eye, it's obviously a typing error, but there are so many companies within our data set that are just one letter off and are completely different entities. So kind of the main struggle, or I guess challenge is what I want to say, because challenges are fun, is figuring out how do we take what a human brain can process very quickly and very naturally as a freight broker or someone in logistics, and make sure that our algorithms can do that or our data set can do that. And so that's something that, is just a lot more of adding filters, adding in, hey, I only want to look at final destination that's here. Hey, I can recognize that the shipment arrived in Long Beach, but is actually getting railed to Chicago and it's coming off at the Chicago ramp instead. That's something that we're mainly focused on. And it was interesting that you talked about additional data sets. We've recently added a Mexico data set. Freight Waves did a nice article on it. And we actually, have had, that was mainly because we knew that nearshoring has become even more important as we go along. We need to know what's coming across the border from Mexico. And so we added that Mexico data set. So for us, it's data sets that make sense. It's adding in new filters, new programs that actually allow us to look at those things. And at the end of the day, it's all about just ease of use for the user. How can we take the inferences that we can make as human beings naturally and make that something that you can add a filter around, add a tool around? And I think also just knowledge and learning is something that's huge. Like our Mexico data set, we actually have the Incoterms of goods. Adding in just a simple directory for this is what an Incoterm is. This tells you who is actually paying for the freight, right? It's something where if I'm a customs broker, very obvious to me, right? But somebody who might just be getting into transportation might see all these shipments between Mexico and the U.S. and go, "Oh wow, let me call, the company in the U.S." But actually, it's the supplier in Mexico that pays for the freight. So a lot of different things around that we're trying to do with learning as well. We've added directories around HS codes, which have been very helpful for people to prospect by vertical. So. Cool. all that to say is new data sets, new features. I mean, we're rolling out new features every week at this point. And so probably the number one thing you're going to see for Import Yeti is if it makes it your job easier, if it makes your life easier as a salesperson, there's a data point that can help you, we're going to add it, or we're going to find a way to add it.
I love that. And, that's one of the reasons you and I actually connected was because of the Mexico data set that you guys had added. I thought that was really intriguing. And I wanted to ask, about that data set. What kind of, who's been reaching out to you, I guess, in terms of that data set? I mean, have you guys seen a lot of influx in terms of people saying, hey, like, what is this data? How can we use this Mexico cross-border data to help us with, trying to dive in more to this Mexico side?
Yeah, it's been very interesting. What's beautiful about the Mexico data set is the Paramentos data set. So it's their actual declarations. So we're no longer just looking at container volume. We're looking at full truckload, intermodal, and air shipments. So we get all modes of transportation that exist in and out of Mexico. So we have a multitude of customers, right? We have freight forwarders, we have domestic truckload carriers, we've got brokers. They do logistics, they're on here. And so a lot of what we've been working with people is simply one, knowledge that this exists, right? The idea that you can actually look at full truckload. But we've seen a lot of cool things with filtering within this data set because this data set gives different data points than what the import data set does. This one gives you this value of cargo. So now if you can provide over 100K in cargo insurance, what a competitive advantage to know every shipment that has that, right? You're also able to look at specific suppliers, right? If I'm somebody who has a branch in Mexico or actually have assets in Mexico, I can look up every supplier in Mexico and find their volumes. And you can look up things like the actual border crossing that occurs. That's something that's been really cool, is seeing people who have transloading facilities in Nuevo Laredo or McAllen, right? Or Nogales, right? A lot of that produce going through Nogales. So people taking a look at that data and saying, okay, these are customers that specifically, I have an asset here that can do this for them. These are people that I didn't even know were moving across the border. So a lot of really cool things there with the Mexico data set. And everybody's been very excited about that. It's been a multitude of use cases for sure. I don't think there's anybody who's come to us that we haven't been able to get them some form of information that helped them. But I think it is a very fascinating data set. And I think it's only going to become more fascinating as nearshoring becomes a larger thing.
Yeah, man, I completely agree. And I'm happy to see and to see you guys add that data and kind of see where you guys kind of evolve over the next couple of years as kind of the trends change, and to kind of see where those data points kind of lie and where people can kind of find different entry points into their shippers and suppliers. Before we wrap here, James, we've quickly come up on time. This felt like we blinked and it was
I felt like we just started.
I know, no kidding, man. I want to get into just kind of like what you're most bullish on for the rest of the year before we wrap up.
Oh wow, bullish on. Oh man, Alabama? No, just kidding. I think I'm very.
They looked good, man. They looked good.
Wait, very big test against Georgia, so we'll see how that goes.
I'm looking forward to that game.
I am not optimistic, but I will be happy if it turns out well. I'm a realistic Bama fan, I'll put it that way.
For sure.
Just make the playoffs here. That's all I ask. I think, what I'm really bullish on for the rest of the year, I think based on the people we've chatted with, prospects, current customers, I'm really bullish on people changing their sales prospecting method. I'm very bullish on people being very active around making these sales pitches that very much focus on what does my customer have? Where do I have a competitive advantage? I do think, this is my 5-year hat instead of my 1-year hat, but I do think, in logistics, people have talked about becoming more of a transactional business. I think that might occur more where people have to carve out their niches. And, that's up for other companies to decide. But I do think that the more companies that use our data, the more likely they are going to be able to carve out a niche and take a hold of the market. And something I'm also very bullish on is I've been very impressed with some of these entry-level salespeople who I remember when I was their age, I was not this smart. I was not this ready to look at data. They have beyond amazed me at how quickly they've adapted to this. Every company, some of the 3-letter brokerages that we're in, they, come in fresh out of college and they're diving into drayage like it's nobody's business. And I remember drayage took me quite a long time to understand, and I barely paid attention to it when I went through my first training class. So they're being super aggressive around understanding the data. So maybe my bullishness is the upcoming salespeople in logistics, the new people in logistics. I've been very, very impressed by how quickly they've caught onto our data and how much success they've had being able to analyze that and use that to their advantage.
It's so cool seeing, kind of using the sports metaphor, seeing some of the young talent come up in logistics, right? Like I remember I was 23-ish when I got into the industry, 23, 24, and I had more of a kind of a sales experience when I got into the industry. I'd been in automotive for like 4 years at that point, 4 or 5 years. So I already had like a sales background, but seeing a lot of these 22, 23-year-olds who just dive into freight right out of college and are like actually really good at it, not these typical, like, you see on Facebook all the time or Reddit. I know you guys are on Reddit a lot. You can see a lot of hate towards the 3-letter brokers because, the people don't know what they're doing, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of great brokers at all brokerages. I think you're right. I think we're going to see maybe not such a consolidation of brokers, but maybe these brokers be kind of go towards more the boutique model and not the big box model of, hey, we can move everything. I think it's going to be more, this brokerage focuses more on food or food and bev or just specifically, reefer freight or and just kind of diving in from there. I think that's kind of the best approach, in my opinion. I'm a big believer in niche and boutique brokerages who can kind of just focus in on one thing and become a massive expert at it and just kind of take over kind of that sector in terms of that transportation. So very bullish on that too, James, and I'm bullish on Import Yeti. I appreciate you coming on the show, taking almost an hour of your time to talk about what you guys are doing. If the audience wants to get in touch, if they want to learn more, if they want to, give some positive feedback, some hate to tell you how much the platform is terrible and they hate it and Yetis scare them so they can't go to the website, how can they find you guys and how can they find Import Yeti?
Yeah, well, ImportYeti.com is our homepage. It is a free website to begin with before you start using Power Query. So you're more than welcome to look at the free version of our website, get used to the user interface, get used to some of the data. And then if you'd like to move up to the main stuff, to Power Query, you're always welcome to email me, whether you want to move up or not. It's just james@ImportYeti.com. Super simple. You're more than welcome to email us. I'm happy to give anybody a trial that's listening. Anybody who wants to try out the system, we're more than welcome to help you there. But email us. We've got plenty of get in contact on our website, or you can just use my email, james@ImportYeti.com, and we'll answer any questions you have or any hate that you want to send us.
If you guys like today's show, make sure you guys do like it or give it a like and review, and we will have James and all of Import Yeti's links in our comments and our show notes. Don't forget, we do drop 3 weekly newsletters at thinkfreight.io, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And don't forget to think freight.